In Belfator, the capital of the empire, His Majesty Siona's husband died just one day after their wedding. Everyone had heard about the news since the morning. The guards, all the staff, relatives, and the guy's wife had gathered in the palace. He was the emperor of the Belfator Empire, and his name was Narian, and this is his child, the crown princess, a very beautiful and lovely lady. No one would have thought that this could happen at such an early age, with no serious health problems and no health complaints. To be his bride. A week ago, a girl arrived from a small kingdom, but at that time she didn't know what was waiting for her. When she saw the luxurious conditions, she started to have dreams and plans for a happy family future. Siona comes from the small kingdom of Dermal, and is the fourth child in her family. She is a princess who has never been helped in anything, and has never been helped in any way. She always tried to stay out of trouble and away from her father's gaze. Her destiny, to tacitly marry whoever he chose. It was the only meaning in her life. But after a letter from Emperor Belfathord, her life was to change beyond recognition. Then her father, who hardly remembered her name, called his daughter into his study, and ordered the girl to be quiet and not to anger his majesty. At that moment, it seemed to her that the fate of the whole kingdom was in her hands. As she was an obedient daughter and never contradicted her father, she did not resist, and at once agreed to. Siona didn't know what she was agreeing to. She chose to trust her father and do as he saw fit. Indeed, as she always did. The only thing she knew at the time was that her husband-to-be was much older than her. The princess did not want to marry a man 16 years older. Especially she did not want to become Empress. She envisioned her life very differently and was sure that nothing good would happen in her life after the wedding. It was obvious from the start why she was chosen for the role, because any other girl wouldn't even talk about it. And Siona, the naive princess who won't ask unnecessary questions and will behave in a way that is convenient for anyone but her. Just a puppet who knows her place. That's what they needed. They didn't even hide that fact from her. It did not take them long to persuade her, and as soon as the decision was made on the father's part, the attendants came to fetch his daughter. After a cold farewell to her father, she was in for a very unexpected surprise. Things happened even better than she expected. There was an unexpected and very warm welcome as soon as the princess entered the grounds of the manor house. She was greeted as if she were a very honored and welcome guest in the house. First of all, Siona saw a little girl, a princess, who was very happy to see her. The girl introduced herself. She is the crown princess. Her name is Loctania. She said Siona can feel at home here. She was really very welcome, so the girl replied that it was mutual. Then the princess asked her to call her simply Lottie. Siona replied that if it was convenient, she would gladly do as she pleased. In this way, they had no trouble in becoming friends at once. The princess was so glad to see her that she could not control herself. She began to jump for joy and rejoice at this long-awaited event. After that, she got to know each person in turn, but that wasn't all. Siona was greeted very warmly and pleasantly. They catered to all her tastes and cooked what she liked. It started out just fine. Being in a place like this, next to her husband and his beautiful daughter, she felt like she was in a fairy tale. The girl never thought it would turn out to be nothing like she'd originally imagined. From the moment Siona appeared in this place, nothing bad had happened. She never stopped smiling and thanking fate for such a gift. After a while, the girl began to make plans and imagined how good it would be here. It's impossible to even remember or think of what's wrong here. Everything going on is like living a dream life. But as we know, all good things unfortunately come to an end sooner or later. In the end, Siona says goodbye to her dead husband, remembering the times when they were good together. So she got the throne, and from that moment on, the problems of her life began to appear one by one. Before her stand the three beasts of the empire, guys best not to piss off, each with their own mission and plans for the future. The three beasts of Belfator, the three great families that made the empire what it is today. The eyes of the empire, the man who guards the borders, Duke Bithrin Kidmalin, his symbol, the eagle. The language of the empire, who deals with internal affairs, Duke Ryan of Gurnia, his symbol, the serpent. Loyal defender of the empire, Duke Aiden Tillander. And the head of the imperial family, Luminal, has the power to control these monsters. Not long ago, the emperor ruled over each of them and was the most powerful man in the empire until he perished. Lottie is still small and weak right now. We can only hope she can handle them in the future. Some believe that one of the beasts is the one who destroyed the emperor, while others say that none of the beasts can harm their master as long as they are bound by an oath. You can't run the empire without their help, so as long as Siona doesn't have any proof of their guilt, they should be cooperated with. When suddenly, one of the beasts, Ryan, came to her unexpectedly. He said he had a very interesting proposition to make. A guy proposes that she marry him. He says it with such certainty, as if he knows the answer in advance. The girl did not expect such a proposal from him, and does not even know how to behave in this situation, so as not to make things worse and not to spoil the relationship with him. He said there was no way a crown princess could come to the throne now, and there was no law against inheriting through marriage. He offers, until Her Highness can accept the crown, to protect them both by becoming her husband and father to the child. The girl is sure he's obviously up to something. He says it in a tone like he's hiding something. And in return for her making him emperor, he promised to rid her of those dangerous beasts. The guy doesn't hide his intentions from anyone, and when he heard him say that, the others started competing and offering her the same thing. The first promised to be her shield and loving husband. The other also did not stand aside and joined in the conversation. He promised to be a loyal dog and make her the happiest girl in the world. Siona doesn't understand what's going on or what they're doing this for, since it's obvious they have no genuine feelings for each other. At the same second, the princess joined in. She began to protest and forbade the girl to even think about it. Maybe the kid knows a little more than Sione does. If the girl listens to the kid, maybe she'll thank you for it later. She immediately started running up to Sione to stop her and not make any mistakes. She's really worried about the girl not regretting anything later on. Afterward, she looked at each of them and commanded that if they did not leave her alone now, they would regret it very much. She thinks her new mom shouldn't fall for these tricks. She thinks none of them are worthy to be her husband. Siona wondered where that little and sweet girl had gone, the one she hadn't expected such a thing from. One of them replied that it was none of her business. The princess would not be silent, and replied that he had better watch his words. The girl wondered why the princess hated these people so much. Most likely there was some conflict between them in the past. Siona Wrinkle-Luminial is the one who has to survive with the princess in this palace full of wild beasts, because now she is the Empress. They only said goodbye to His Majesty yesterday, so she thought it would be completely inappropriate now. She decided to refuse all of them and asked to take this decision with understanding, because she cannot so easily forget her husband and let a few days start a relationship with someone else. After that, they decided to leave and asked not to make any more such offers. The girl had no sooner taken the first step than someone asked her to linger. The thing is, the animals don't believe they can be allies. Siona wouldn't even listen to it. She turned around and went about her business. She wasn't interested in talking to them anymore. She closed the door very hard and loudly on purpose, signaling that the conversation was over. After a while, the Empress was hungry, so she asked me to cook her dinner. But to keep her waiting, the aides offered to drink tea and brought some snacks. At this point, she never got to enjoy this moment. The girl is afraid of making a mistake and doesn't know how to be. She even thought it might be better to go home. At the same second, someone approached her. An assistant came up to her and told her that some letter had arrived, and she offered to open it and read it. This letter from the Kingdom of Dermal. Siona thanked and said it was a very important letter. It's a letter from her father. Maybe he wants to know how she's doing, and if she's coming home. As it turned out, it was a letter of warning, in his opinion, not to get involved in the case of the Emperor's death. She shouldn't go home or try to run away. She has to endure these trials, no matter how difficult it turns out to be. He only wants to ask her for one thing, that the girl not give up and defend her authority, because surely it's already being tried to be broken by some of the people around him. I wonder very much if she will answer this letter, and what the Empress thinks about it. Because now, she's in a position where she can and has the right to make her own decision, as opposed to how it was before. The maid noticed that the mistress was very upset, so she suggested that she take a walk in the garden. It would help to lift her spirits and make up her mind about her choice. The girl said it was a very good idea, so she asked me to wait for her for a few minutes. They went outside, and for the first time, they didn't even talk. Siona started thinking about her problems, and the assistant didn't bother to impose herself. At some point, the Empress spoke. She began to enjoy this peaceful and quiet place, when suddenly, she happened to notice a princess sitting by a huge tree. Siona didn't expect a child to walk in such places, especially without friends, alone. It's very strange that the princess didn't warn anyone and hid near the tree. She must be upset about something. The girl couldn't get past the child. She wondered why she was here and what had happened. The child sits there with no mood, which means there's some kind of problem. But not to start with the bad. Siona talked about the weather and the chilly winds. She was afraid to frighten her, since the princess probably wouldn't want to talk to her. The girl smiled, and instead of ignoring it, she smiled and took her mom's hand. It felt really good to feel cared for. I really wonder if she'll say something or try to avoid this conversation. Instead of insisting, the Empress simply decided to observe her. She saw that the child was upset about something. She looks too depressed. And most likely the princess has started to miss her father. She has realized he is gone, and is trying to come to terms with the new reality without him. It was to the Empress he was a husband for a day, but to her he was a caring father for life, whom he loved dearly and would love dearly. Siona imagines how hard it is for her, but at the same time is afraid to do or say anything unnecessary. The loss of a loved one is much more painful for children than for adults. They refuse to believe in bad things for a very long time and cannot return to normal life for a long time. Girl is sure that the emperor was a good father, for he was kind even to her whom he had known for a few hours. He was always interested in her well-being and tried to make their life together as comfortable as possible. She didn't even notice the age difference and saw him as a real, caring and loving man. He was trying to make sure his wife had no obligations, to enjoy life. He really was the ideal every girl dreams of, but unfortunately he had only one downside, an unfortunate fate. There was a moment when they were talking late at night. The girl remembered very well how, at that moment, it felt as if she had known him all her life. He was incredibly comfortable and pleasant to talk to. The emperor had a special energy that soothes, disposes, and gives strength. Though Siona had known him for a few days after his death, she felt as if she had known him all her life. It all happened just one day ago. She has very few memories, but she still has a lot of feelings. The girl is sure it's unlikely she'll meet a partner as perfect as the dead emperor. At some point, she realized that unlike her, it hurt 100 times more for the baby to lose him. He was the only family she could trust. Her father was everything to her. Support, best friend, and of course the best father in the world, whose love cannot be replaced or found in another person. The hardest thing is to accept his death and move on with your life. They're going to have to do it anyway, so Siona suggested they promise each other something. The princess was very interested. She became very curious as to what it meant. The girl said that since they were both grieving for someone who was important to them, they should promise that they would always be together as mother and daughter. The princess didn't expect to hear such words, and of course she was insanely pleased to hear it, especially at such a difficult moment. In the end, they agreed to protect and help each other like a real family, because they have no one else. So, just as her father had wanted, she stayed in the empire and began to create the life of her dreams on her own. Elbow and her, they'll get stronger and take care of each other. For now, they use the 3 wild beasts as their strength. After talking to the princess, the girl summoned one of them to you. The lad heard the request and came at once. He couldn't turn down the opportunity, because it was his chance to get what he wanted. Duke Aiden greeted the Empress and said he would be very glad to help her. The girl apologized for distracting him at such a late hour, but explained that this was a very important conversation. Aiden smiled and asked, "It was more like a secret meeting that no one should know about." He thinks it's very brave of her, because an important conversation can be resolved at any time of the day. To save time, Siona said she had a proposition for him. More specifically, she would like to respond to the proposal she recently received from him. It sounds very interesting. She wants to know what the Empress has in mind. She formally approached him with a proposal to get rid of Ryan and Bithrin together. The guy expected to hear a marriage proposal, but it turned out to be a little different. He wonders what's in it for her, and what she needs it for. He had a lot of questions, but for now, he decided not to interrupt her and listen to the end, because he might miss the most interesting part of the story. It turned out that the girl had already said everything, so the Duke began to talk. He understood why they met here at such a time. It was a great honor for him, but still, He wants to know why the Empress chose him. To which Siona replied that it was because of his words that day. She remembered some of the situation very well. When they met in the corridor and the girl did not pass, she paused. And then he started talking to her himself and asked her to spare some time for him. He really had something he wanted to say. And it was not the first time the Empress was tired of refusing and yet asked what he wanted of her. She speculated that perhaps he wanted to demand that he be made emperor again. But the Duke convinced her otherwise. The Empress was surprised and thought that perhaps he really did want to talk to her about something important. At the time, he said he wasn't interested at all now. He was more worried about her making a bad decision she might regret. He really didn't want to have to serve one of those beasts. So, he asked her to think things through and think of others. Meanwhile, the Empress believes that as soon as he has no interest in ascending the throne, she has made the right choice. Duke rejoiced and said that he was very glad they understood each other. But he had one condition. As each of the dukes has a special skill, an ability that has firmly cemented the empire, and they have to pay with their security. And in spite of this, they must use the forces at the emperor's command, without the right to choose or refuse anything. So in order to prevent Princess Loctania from using him as a beast when she ascends the throne, all he wants is for the Empress to destroy his beast seal by any means necessary, and do it as soon as possible. It's really important to him. Without it, there's no point in him helping her and giving her advice. Siona wondered if the seal of the beast was helping to freely control the Duke, however. It's a seal. It's an oath, and it's the symbol of their empire. It's not something she can interfere with so easily. Eventually, she wanted to find a compromise. The Empress replied that she agreed, but the person who would destroy the seal would not be her, but Loctania. The guy didn't expect that. When he heard the word according to, he almost rejoiced, but the joy didn't last long. He said that in that case, it was just an empty promise on her part, since there was no guarantee that the princess would agree to it. The girl asked why he was so surprised. Because in the future he will divert from the throne in favor of the princess, as she is the future of this empire. In addition, if the Empress does so, he can protect himself and the child. And afterward, she wondered if maybe it was his words that turned out to be empty or hiding some unknown plan that he doesn't want to talk about, and he's hiding behind some kind of security for his life. At this point, he tried to step into her shoes and understand why she was so afraid to trust him in this situation. He realizes she's unlucky to lose her husband on the second day after the wedding, but he'd tell me he's a better man himself. Either way, it's not like either of those two destroyed the emperor. He doesn't feel the need to do so from them, so he thinks this girl will soon be back in her little kingdom, back home, and until then, he'll just wait. It means the guy's obviously not telling us something. He's got a very clear plan he's trying to follow. Even by his reaction when the Empress offers her terms, he is clearly confused about something. He doesn't even hide his reaction. At least he doesn't succeed at it. Meanwhile, he asked what the result of this conversation was. He wanted to know if she would agree to marry him. The Empress replied that her conditions were only part of the process. She was not going to marry without a concrete understanding of what the benefits were to her. And the most important thing the girl left out at the end, she warned him that she would only marry him if he brought her the man who was involved in her husband's death. But boy, I'm sure Siona is using this as an excuse to get rid of the other beasts. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense at all. Siona thinks the truth about the Emperor's death is not that important. She wants to create a fake reason to deal with the serpent and the eagle. There are some caveats to their oath. If one of them betrays their master, the others will immediately want to destroy that one. They can't even control it, which is why it's so important for a guy to nullify the curse in order to fulfill his mission and get what he wants. But there is one point. In the Emperor's money, the Duke felt nothing. He had no emotion. After that, he said that she probably didn't care at all about finding out who was involved in the Emperor's death. She just wanted to get rid of the other beasts for the safety of the child. The girl was surprised, for he had understood her intention very quickly and correctly. Meanwhile, the next day came. From the morning, the Empress ordered the beasts to come to a little meeting of the... She gathered them in one office to discuss something very important. The girl warned that some might be upset, some might be happy, and some might not care. But there's no point in dragging this out any longer. Siona's ready to tell us what they're all here for. The girl said she agreed. If they wanted marriage, they could arrange it. The boys hesitated, for she did not understand why she had invited 3 at once, for she should have agreed to marry only one. They became very interested in talking about it, but at the same time, obviously there's going to be some conditions. Things aren't going to be as easy as they seem to be. They began to get nervous, for there was only one thing left to find out: which of them the Empress had chosen as her husband. One of them became very much excited and asked if he could learn the man's name, but the answer was, the Empress was a little upset. She said she hadn't yet had time to choose who she would marry. She needed a little more time to do so. But in any case, one of them will be her companion for the rest of her life. However, the girl barely knows these people. After that, she sat down in her seat and said the most important thing of all. The thing is, before you choose a husband for yourself, she'll have to get to know each of them and decide who really deserves to get that status and become emperor. Her plan is as follows. Every month, Siona will go on 2 dates with each of them. Then she'll choose the one she likes best. But it's not as simple as it seems. In fact, this way she can keep the advantage. If she slackens, she'll be destroyed by one of them right away. As this cannot be allowed to happen, you need to control the situation and make them compete with each other. It is very dangerous, but at the same time interesting for each participant. Probably they have not had such an experience yet, and nobody knows who will be the winner. They will have to try very hard indeed and prove themselves worthy to take the place of the previous emperor. After that, the girl decided to simplify the task and told about her preferences. In fact, everything is very simple. She likes kind and caring men who always think of her comfort and prove it by doing things. The beasts looked at her and realized that simple words would not do. They would have to try and work a little harder. It's actually a very simple task, but at the same time fair enough. She really doesn't know them. Accordingly, you can't get married without learning anything about the person. Afterward, she advised them to hide their fangs, for the game and competition begins at that second. The next day came. The aide informed her that the princess was waiting for her in the drawing room, and it seemed that Her Highness's aunt, the Marquis of Senwood, had come in. The day began with unexpected news and guests who had not warned anyone about their visit as usual, however. The Empress had a bad feeling, for it was not clear why the princess wanted to see her so much after seeing her aunt. The girl went straight to the living room where Lottie was waiting for her. She just entered the room as the girl immediately ran up and started hugging her. She missed her and said it was good to see her because they've been seeing a lot less of each other lately. The girl noticed that the child didn't look well, so she asked how she was feeling. The princess decided to reassure her mom and explained that everything was fine. Besides, that's not what she wanted to talk to her about at all. She's really curious about what Mom said to the dukes who wanted to throw the wedding. Siona replied that the girl can take it easy since she has no plans for a new wedding and she's made it happen. The princess has really calmed down and is very happy. You can see that she is very worried, but so far not explaining anything. As suddenly, the girl got very nervous and started saying that if she liked any of them, she should agree and marry them. But she said it in such a voice as if someone had made her do it. The Empress suggested that perhaps the Marquise had said something to her. The princess was at first afraid to speak of it, but nevertheless told, according to the Marquis, if the Empress did not remarry, she would return to the kingdom. So if she chose someone from the Duke, there would be safety for the child realizes it's not good news, so she's afraid to even look her in the eye. At that moment, Siona realized the woman knew something, namely that if one of the dukes became emperor, the princess could be destroyed. They all said they would abdicate when the time came, but really, all they want to do is get rid of the mark of the beast, given that it makes no sense for her as empress to let the last master bound to them live. And even so, the Marquise wants the girl to remarry for security purposes. In that case, she decided to tell the child about her decision. The girl asked her to calm down, and revealed that she has no plans to marry, with no plans to return to the kingdom anyway. The girl cried even harder and worried that her mom would be safe. She doesn't understand why the Empress isn't afraid of anything. In response, the girl asked that the princess let the adults sort it all out. The only thing she needed to. For someone to share the candy with her, she purposely changed the subject so I wouldn't have to see her cry again. When Lottie cries, It makes her feel like she's guilty of something or has hurt her. Though it was not so, for the princess simply did not want to lose her as much as her father, when suddenly Lottie raised her head and said she made a very important decision. She didn't want to stand by and decided that he would try very hard to take the throne to protect himself and his mother. Because that's the most important thing to her. She really wants to make sure that no one can hurt them. The Empress did not expect to hear such words from a child. She thought that the girl did not even know what problems she had, and doesn't know what's going on around her. But apparently her father's death has made her an adult in a very short time. Eventually, the Empress thanked her daughter and said that unfortunately she had to leave on business. And before leaving, the girl announced a new rule and asked that it be adhered to by everyone who was responsible for letting guests into the house. She said that from now on, she would forbid the Marquise to visit the palace, so that at least she would not upset the child. Lottie was very surprised and couldn't believe that her mom had reacted so quickly to the problem and could see that she was really very scared and uncomfortable talking to that woman. The Empress asked if everyone had heard this order, to which the aide replied that from now on, that woman would no longer appear in the palace grounds. He promised that he would do his best to make it happen, and he would supervise everyone else. At the very last moment, Lottie ran up to her mother and said that it was not at all necessary to. She said that if it was because of her, she shouldn't have been so worried about it, because nothing too bad had happened. Siona explained that without it, they can't control their security. The woman tries to do it her way, but now she won't succeed because protecting the child is her duty as Empress and her mother. The girl thinks a person like her doesn't deserve to be in this palace, so this decision is out of the question. She promised that she would try to protect her child, even if from the outside it seemed impossible. Thereupon, the Empress again addressed her aide. She said that when the Emperor was still alive, he said she could trust him and ask for help when needed. The assistant replied that this was true, and he would gladly assist his new mistress, for that was his job. The girl smiled and began to hope that the Emperor was not wrong, and this aide was indeed trustworthy. Afterward, the man answered again and promised that he would serve her and the princess for the rest of his life. And of this, they could have no doubt. Siona thanked him and told him that if this was really how it was going to be, she would be very happy. The next day has come. It is the same day when a date with one of the beasts is scheduled. The girl has been preparing for it for days, and finally, the day has come. Since she doesn't have many candidates, hopefully one will be worthy enough for her to marry. Instead of talking about the weather or each other's moods, the guy started talking about the ban for the Marquise, which means he's really interested in talking about it a lot more than her interests or plans for their future together. The guy said that even he knows that Princess Benita is a pretty ambitious person. She's very hard to change her mind or impose her opinion on. He asked if a ban would be enough, for he was sure Her Highness would not give up so easily. The guy addressed her as her Weissen, which means it's pure provocation. The girl asked if he wanted to be on the same side as her or if he had some other plans, because if so, this date could be coming to an end. The beast replied that this cake, it was the most famous cake in their capital, and he had specially ordered it because the girl loved sweets. And then said he hoped she understood his answer. At this point, Siona thought this man was very socially inept. It's very difficult for him to answer provocative questions and hide his emotions. It's very obvious he probably doesn't even realize it. In that case, she asked him to answer just one question: why he called the Marquise a princess. In response, he explained that it was because of the oath, for the power and spirit of Luminil flowed in her as well. Siona was very surprised, for she never thought he would say such words to her. She honestly couldn't imagine that he could know about it. The girl asked, does he mean to say that she, her son, can control beasts at this moment? The guy's reaction was too strange. He didn't answer anything and just gestured with his hands. That it's the one that's wrong. The girl is sure that if the beasts could, they'd have attacked her more than once already. Are the same men who lined up to marry her until the princess ascended to the throne. Siona replied that if suddenly he really does not deceive and tells the truth, then the Marquise was already long attacked. The Empress hinted that lying is not a good quality for a future husband. In response, the beast smiled and tried again. That he wasn't fooling anyone. He went on to say that it made no sense to him at all. He liked the Empress's reaction and persistence very much. So he decided to tell her a secret. The Senwoods have an opportunity to take the throne, but not many people know about it. The Empress began to get very nervous and could barely ask in a calm voice how on earth they could do this. The serpent replied that it was very simple. They had one goal to fulfill in the near future. They need to destroy the last direct descendant, respectively the princess. Now I see why the girl was against her mother's marriage to any of them. She knows a lot more than her mother, so she just wanted to keep herself and her safe. The girl felt it, but didn't know what the reason was. But now she knows everything. The Empress didn't think she would find out this information on a date with a guy. But in any case, it wouldn't be superfluous. Now she knew a little more. Now it is clear why the time when the Marquise came, the girl hid behind her mother's back. She just knew who this man was and did not want to talk to him. The guy asked how much the girl was worried about the princess, but as usual, from this question was just for his benefit to say the following. The serpent promised that if she married him, he would destroy the Senwood family forever, and she would never see them again. They would no longer be on this planet. Of course, the Duke said very pretty words and offered her what she needed. But the fact was that the Duke replied that the girl was right and began to consider how he could be different from the others to offer something special. At some point, he had an idea. The lad was delighted, thereby making the Empress incredibly interested. She asked what it was but in response she heard words she definitely didn't expect to hear. She was hoping to hear something unique and very meaningful. But he started talking about his beauty. Siona thought it was a joke, because at the moment, it was a bit inappropriate. She was interested in something else, but obviously not his beauty, because everyone is beautiful in their own way. Afterwards, so that he might not be so much pleased and smiling, she hinted that she liked a more manly type of man, to which the Duke replied that, unlike his rivals, he possessed superintelligence. According to him, no one knows the state of affairs in Belfast better than he does, and that's one of his advantages. But that wasn't enough for the Empress, because there are many talented and intelligent people in this empire, so she can easily find that ability in someone else. At this point, she didn't feel sorry for him and admitted that he was far less attractive than she thought. But did she really choose to hurt him? The Duke thought at first that he was just imagining it. But at some point, he became incredibly offended, because he really cared about what others thought about his appearance. The Empress realized it was the first time he had heard such a thing. But in any case, she wanted to spare him too much self-esteem and an inflated opinion of himself. After a few minutes, she offered to end the date and said that now he was free. The next meeting wouldn't be for a few weeks at the earliest. After that, the weather outside deteriorated a lot. Dark clouds appeared. Bright sunshine and pleasant atmosphere disappeared. A heavy downpour has begun, which makes it impossible to stay comfortably outside, especially to travel long distances without a carriage. The assistant offered to call a carriage, because without it, it would be very difficult and inconvenient to get to the destination. Because of the darkness and heavy rain, the Empress begins to lose her strength and desire to do anything at all. She wants to go back to her warm room and do nothing. The girl got into the carriage, and all the while the road proved to be too long. Usually she really enjoys going somewhere, but this time it was a real ordeal. At some point she started looking around as if she thought she saw something. The Empress looked at her assistant and started asking a lot of questions. It seemed to her that Duke Bithrin was somewhere around here. The assistant didn't understand why she thought that. There was no one around. At least she didn't see or notice anyone else. It turned out that the girl saw him from the window. She looked at him and immediately realized that it was him. But for some reason, despite the heavy downpour, he's not even without a carriage. The Duke is just standing in the street, and he doesn't even have an umbrella. At this point, the Empress asked her aide to stop to inquire. For some reason, right now, she was interested in talking to him. Aide stopped at once, but at the same time it was incomprehensible to him what had made her stop, for they had not even traveled half the distance. But it seems the Empress really felt something. She couldn't ignore it and move on. Siona said his name very loudly and asked him to turn around. The boy was surprised, for he heard a familiar voice. He didn't expect anyone to be outside in such terrible weather, much less the Empress. At this point, She suggested that he join her and get into the carriage, for it would be much more comfortable that way. She hated to see anyone standing in the rain. His clothes were soaked and there was no telling how long he would have to stand there. She really wanted to help the man, because she imagined herself in his shoes and realized that everyone would do that in her place. The boy did not expect such kindness from her, for he did not even notice the carriage passing by. He looked at her with a look which words cannot convey. He sincerely thanked her for her help. The Duke approached the carriage and asked why she offered him this help, for the girl owed him nothing. The thing is, it's not customary for the Empress or someone of higher status to offer help to the others. Accordingly, since the Empress was opposed to these rules, she did not pass by and did as she thought fit to do. As the Duke stood on the muddy ground, his shoes became very dirty, and at some point he accidentally smeared the Empress's dress with it. He felt very embarrassed, especially after she offered to help him, and he messed up her thing the first minute he was there. The girl asked if he was really worried about it. The Duke became so embarrassed that he was afraid to even answer something. Siona said he shouldn't worry about it, since nothing terrible had happened. Besides, he'd better think of himself. She explained that there was no problem and that it didn't matter if the dress was dirty, because it could be washed and tomorrow it would be sparkling clean. The Duke did not expect such a reaction, because he was sure that after that, she would immediately throw him back out on the street and would not tolerate it. In the meantime, a few minutes had passed. The weather had noticeably improved. The clouds disappeared from the sky, and bright sunshine appeared, which immediately improved everyone's mood and changed the atmosphere of the day. Surprisingly, the moment the rain ended, the Duke stopped fidgeting and everyone forgot about the situation. Meanwhile, the moment had come to say goodbye. The Empress proposed to see him next time at the villa. The Duke immediately agreed and said he was honored. He would love to meet her and have a nice time with her. After that, they said goodbye and each went about their business, no matter what. Everyone was happy in the end. Meanwhile, the Empress went straight to her office. She called her assistant and asked if there was any information about the oath. He brought all the necessary documents and said that there was nothing else. Siona began to read these documents and learned that the previous emperor, he was the one who tamed the three beasts. Its legend says how the snake, the eagle, and the third beast became human through an oath. It turns out that the beasts did become human, and these are not just made-up names that sound pretty. By the time this story was passed down, they were already human. Some interpret this as the emperor's nickname for the boys who explored after him. The deputy is sure he can say one thing for sure. They all swore allegiance to the emperor, and then immediately gained strange powers. The Duke of Guernsey can convince people of anything and make them do what he tells them to do without question. Duke Kidmelin sees through everything with his eagle eyes. He has excellent eyesight that sees everything and more. In other words, Ryan can use on the Empress his power to gain the throne and Bithrin as well. He can see that she made a deal with Aiden and that's too bad. It's impossible to hide anything from him, much less try to deceive him. Siona asked if Duke Bithrin's eyes can see everything. Can he read a person's mind? To which the assistant replied that it is believed so. It is said that the ancient eagle can indeed read people's minds. She was very curious about what Aiden could do then. Obviously, he must have the same special and very useful ability. It turns out that the aide knows about this too. He revealed that Duke Tillander, he's becoming a wild animal, and as scary as it sounds, it's true. The girl was very surprised, because she didn't think that was possible. She wanted to know some more information about it. She's surprised that he can actually transform into an animal that can destroy any enemy in its path. It turns out that the aide had seen with his own eyes how the previous Duke had incredible strength and was unstoppable. Only his master could stop him. In that case, the situation becomes more dangerous. Everything turned out to be much more serious than the girl originally thought, because each of them is strong in his own way. And this too huge. The first thing she has to do is find out if she can pass on the vows, because if she doesn't do anything, they'll only get closer to their goal every day, and she doesn't want that. She was beginning to have a little plan, but anyway, she would have to think it over very carefully. Any mistake could be the last. People like them take every opportunity to get what they want. In the opinion of the aide, it would be much better and more correct if the Empress would ask Her Highness how best to act and what best not to do. Siona realizes that she won't be able to control Aiden for long. She really wants to know what to do and how not to make a mistake. At that moment, the man decided to calm his mistress and advised that in such cases it was better not to hurry. Besides, it was too early to worry, because nothing bad had happened so far. And also, the aide reminded them that none of them can just use their powers whenever they feel like it. It's not that simple. Because if someone did that, that person would be risking their life, and no one wants that. Since there is always a price to pay for power, not many people dare to risk their lives or anything else. It turns out that it's not as bad as it seemed at first glance. The girl has every chance to protect herself and her child, as well as punish anyone who planned to harm her or gain the throne through deceit or anything like that. Aiden, the 27th Duke. The Belfator Empire is barely over 300 years old, with a new duke appearing about every 10 years. Bithrin is 21. Rian is 23. The girl promised herself that she would take revenge on anyone who tried to harm her. At this point, she thought to herself that most likely they had some sort of master who was in control and told them what they needed to do. It is a very strange structure of empire in which the emperor covers for his patrons, his beasts of burden. It seems that from this day on, the most interesting things begin. The girl already understands what she needs to do next and who to be wary of. She only now realized that it wasn't as easy as she had originally thought. Everyone had their own agendas and desires to get their hands on it any way they could, no matter how hard and difficult it turned out to be. Meanwhile, the very day of the rendezvous with the Duke, whom the girl had not long ago invited into her carriage in a heavy downpour, had arrived. They met in a very beautiful place. He gave her incredibly beautiful and fragrant flowers, which created a special atmosphere that any girl in her shoes would appreciate. At some point, they started talking about that situation, and the Empress finally found out why he was standing in the rain and didn't call for a carriage. Turns out it's a lot more interesting than you'd think. The guy wanted to consummate some relationship, but the girl asked him to meet that day. At that place, she ended up not showing up and kept him waiting for hours. Siona hadn't expected him to be patient enough to stand in the cold rain waiting for a girl who had even warned that the meeting was canceled. After that, she remembered what they were here for and realized that it was probably a little inappropriate to discuss his past relationships, since time was short and it would be better to talk about the important things. But at some point she didn't hold on and decided to continue. She really wanted to know why he was so insistent on waiting for that girl. Through this conversation, she was able to find out that the guy is patient. If he loves someone, he's willing to forgive anything and wait as long as it takes. At that moment, the guy suddenly used his ability and read her mind and also looked into her past and then said, "It looks like she made her choice a long time ago, and there's no point in continuing this date." The Empress did not expect such words from him because, in fact, she has not decided at all. Probably he just saw the last date and mistakenly thought that the choice has already been made. Although it is not true. It was the first time she had encountered his ability, and she was surprised at how quickly he was able to see into her past. He did it in just a few seconds. At this moment, she casually recalled the words of her assistant, who had said that every time a beast used an ability, it paid a lot of money for it. But what if the price wasn't as high as it seemed in the beginning? Afterward, the Duke inquired why she had stopped for him and offered to help him that day. The Empress replied that it was raining heavily and she couldn't just leave it there and drive by. In her opinion, there could be no other reason. It was very simple, as suddenly, the guy couldn't help himself and started begging her to choose him. It's very important to him. At least that's what he says. Siona asked why she should do it and how he was different from the others for her to make such an important and responsible choice in his favor. In response, he did not delay and warned that if she chose a snake, the man would destroy her as soon as he had the opportunity to do so. About the third beast, in his opinion, the one who most wants to get rid of the princess. He has a single mission that he has no intention of backing down from. So, he said that the best and safest choice she can make is to choose him. In his opinion, if she chooses him to be her husband, only then no one will get hurt, and no one can hurt her and her child. But before she could answer that question, she asked why he wanted to become emperor so badly. Surely wanting to protect her and the baby wasn't the only thing he needed it for. As it turns out, it's not about hurting anyone at all. In fact, he just hates being who he is now. He has a lifelong dream of changing the status he's been striving for years. But since others want to become emperor with bad intentions, he's sure that if a girl chooses someone other than him, she'll regret it very much. At this point, the girl is completely confused. She wants to believe this man. But on the other hand, maybe this is a usual manipulation and a trap, as her assistant warned her of. Meanwhile, the guy apologized for such a gloomy topic, because ahead of the holidays, which should be met with a good mood, and do not think about bad things, the girl asked what he means. Duke replied that it would be her birthday very soon, so he wouldn't want to talk about something bad and not ruin her mood. At the same second, the girl heard some strange and very loud sound. She was very frightened, but as it turned out, it was the sound of an ordinary large balloon, which are customary to congratulate on such days. After that, her daughter came into the room and started yelling really loudly and congratulating her on the holiday. The princess wished her mom a happy birthday, gave her a gorgeous bouquet of flowers, and perhaps all the best of luck. Siona is just shocked. She didn't even think anyone remembered this day. She never told anyone what her birthday was, much less asked for any gifts, flowers, congratulations, or anything like that. Of course, she is very pleased to hear such words and receive gifts, especially from a princess who remembered this day from the very morning. She's never been congratulated like this before, so it's a birthday she'll remember for the rest of her life. Since the girl was used to no one ever doing such a thing, not even her parents, she didn't even have any thoughts of expecting such a thing from either of them. A smile appeared on her face. The girl forgot all her problems and wanted to enjoy this day for the first time in her whole life. She began to admire this bouquet, for they were the first flowers she had ever been given in her entire life. They were truly beautiful. The princess looked to the side and saw some boy. She was very surprised and asked what he was doing here. It turns out he came to see her. The guy said they hadn't seen each other in a long time, and he was very happy to see her. He starts asking how she's doing, and it turns out he's the younger brother of one of the animals. Afterwards, he went up to the Empress and began to apologize for the trouble his elder brother was giving her. He apologized for his rude behavior. The girl replied that everything was fine, but unlike the Empress, the princess becomes very nervous in his presence, because she understands perfectly well what he came for, and what he is doing here. At this moment, another person came to them, whom the Empress was definitely not expecting. He said he had brought her something. Would like to wish her a happy birthday? Siona doesn't even know how to react or what to say, because there are too many people around her. It's very strange that the guy showed up unannounced, and at the exact moment she had a date with someone else. He probably knew about it and wanted to ruin it. In his opinion, there's nothing more important than Her Majesty's birthday, so not even the lack of an invitation won't stop him. He doesn't even notice how much he has now angered the Empress. She didn't even begin to hide her emotions. The girl went up to him and warned him that if he was planning to ruin the date, he was not going to succeed, and by his behavior, he was only making things worse for himself. The girl was once again convinced that she needed to find the mark as soon as possible and hide it in a safe place, so that no one would even guess where she could hide it and that she had done it at all. And of course, there was a third beast. He came up and said that apparently he was a little late to this party, and really, he was just looking for his brother. But it looks like he's already here, and he missed something interesting. The girl is sure that such coincidences simply do not happen. They either planned and decided together to ruin her date, or there must be some other explanation. After that, he also congratulated her on the holiday and wished her well, and after that, apologized for the sudden visit. He explained that it was not on purpose, and after that, he asked her to pay attention to his gift. The guy came not empty-handed and really wanted to surprise her, but it seems that he has already succeeded. Surprised not only the Empress, but all the others as well. He gave her his golden statue and told her that he thought it was a beautiful gift that should stand in her room, even if she chose someone else for herself. It's a very strange gift, and as much as she wanted to hide her reaction, the girl failed. It looks and sounds too unexpected and very strange. Besides, it's a very expensive gift, and it would have been much better if this statue had her face on it, but it seems the Duke didn't think of that. At that moment, the man she was on a date with came up to her. The Duke said it was his turn. He also wanted to give her a special gift. Is a crystal chess set, which unlike the other gifts, really impressed the Empress. The girl received so many special gifts for the first time, she doesn't even know how to react to it, and how to properly thank each of them for the attention. Immediately afterward, the gift decided to give the third beast, to whom she had the most suspicions. But in any case, the girl could not refuse. It would be very disrespectful and impolite on her part. Empress began to think of different options, because judging by what the previous gifts were, the gift of this guy should be as interesting and unusual. But for some reason, there's no gift in his hands. The guy asked for attention, but nothing happens. Like something went wrong. He looked towards the Empress's aide and started to get very nervous. He doesn't even know how to explain it. At this point, he started talking about the marquise. It's very strange, because originally, he was talking about some kind of gift. The situation is getting too strange. The guy explained that since the woman couldn't get into the palace, she had asked to pass something with the help of another person who was now near them. The boy handed her some gift and congratulated the Empress on her behalf. The girl was very surprised, but because of politeness, she could not refuse and still accepted the gift. At this point, the princess started to get very nervous. She ordered to return to the gift and not even open it. But at this point, the girl didn't listen to her. She considered that it would be very ugly on that side. She was so present and looked at what was inside. She was really very interested to see it. It turns out the woman gave her some kind of pen. It's a very strange gift, but the Empress seems to have liked it very much. She thanked for the gift and afterwards turned to everyone else and also thanked for the attention. She really enjoyed it despite everything. At that moment, Siona remembered that one of the guys never gave her a present. She wondered if he had left the best part for last. She was very interested to see what he had prepared for her. Duke began to get nervous because he was worried that she might not like it. Although the girl liked to receive gifts one by one, that she will not be upset. She is not happy with the result, but with the process itself. It turned out that the guy prepared a really very special gift. He gave her a sword that was used in the battle of the first head of the Tillander. This thing is really unique to receive it as a gift, a huge honor for any person. The girl said it was a very valuable gift that she promised to take care of for the rest of her life, of course. It's not really a gift for a girl. But anyway, she's very pleased. She imagines how valuable the sword is. Then, very unexpectedly, he came still nearer to her and drew his present from its case. The Duke had given no warning, and the Empress seemed much frightened. She doesn't understand why he's doing it because it's her gift, and she doesn't understand why he's doing it. Was it really part of his plan, which will now be revealed? Hopefully the girl is worried for nothing, and everything will be fine. He starts talking about using this sword in some way. No one understands what he's talking about. His behavior and actions are becoming more and more alarming by the second. But at this point, the guy keeps smiling. He looked at everyone around him and apparently wants to do something or ask for something. Even the animals who try not to show that they are very frightened and don't understand what is happening, they are no longer able to hide it. Fortunately, everything went quietly. The girl thanked each of them and said that she had a lot of things to do, so she had to go back to her office. She started talking to her assistant and asked his opinion, what he thought about it, because everything had happened too strangely. The last word from the guy who gave her that sword was that he was willing to give her some of his powers. It's actually a very interesting offer. But anyway, she realizes that you can't trust this man so easily. It's obvious that he only does things where there is a benefit. Even this gift doesn't mean he did it for nothing. It has become very difficult to know who to trust and who not to trust. Everyone is trying to look better than they really are. She never found out who is really who. The girl is confused and wants someone to help her. She's tired of always expecting some traps or trickery. She probably that even if nothing bad has happened so far, it doesn't mean that it won't happen, for example, in a few hours, days, or right now. Siona asked that if, all of a sudden, the aide found out any more information, she would be very happy to find out anything else, because there was no one else who could help her with this but him. The man promised that he would try to do his best and what his current capabilities allowed him to do, and so ended this beautiful day. She had managed to rest a little, but still, the girl could not forget and not think about problems at all. A few days later, there's a meeting of state affairs at Lycemus. As always, it's never quiet. There are a lot of people here trying to solve serious problems. Lately, and accumulated too much more than ever before, some began to accuse the Duke of having made some mistake and refusing to accept it. In addition to all the major problems, they want to finally solve the problem with the guy getting married. They have tried to do everything they can for this, and are not happy with the guy's efforts. They think he is not doing enough. Instead of him, even his father came several times to the Empress and tried to explain why she should make in favor of his son but the girl constantly refused and said that no one can influence her decision. It is only her choice, which does not depend on other people's problems. The guy constantly convinces his relatives that everything is not as difficult as it seems to them. He knows perfectly well what he has to do, and has already calculated the time long ago. So he sees no point in getting nervous before the time. He doesn't have time to explain his plan to each of them. He only asked for one thing, that they trust him and not try to rush him every few days. He understands how important it is to them, but if he does what they want, the Empress will only get angry and remove him from the list of candidates. After all, everything in its own time, she told each of them that. If he tries to stand out too much, there will be a lot of expectations from him. But in order to get what he wants and become emperor, one must act as carefully as possible and not promise what he is not sure of. To speed up the process, he turns to his brother, constantly changing the plan and giving expensive gifts. He is sure that once the day of their next date comes, the girl will treat him much better than she did originally. He tries to explain to his relatives that the Empress is not so easily deceived as they think. She perfectly sees and understands the meaning of every word and deed on their part. No matter how much his father tries to change his mind and impose his opinion that he should be much more active, the guy is not even going to listen to him.